welcome back to stop number 3 on the History of Things podcast, Instagram video exclusive. We're covering the 156th anniversary of the Battle of Monocacy Junction, the battle that saved Washington. So far, we've covered cavalry clashes that precede the actual July 9th battle day. We've covered the opening phases of the battle where they're moving down the Georgetown Pike south towards D.C. It's modern day 355 over on the Best Farm, if you're here at modern day Monocacy National Battlefield. And sort of where we left off was the Union defenders of this ground have been putting up a sturdier defense than Jubal Early has been expecting to. He has sort of gotten his ransom, I guess, under control. He's hitting the field, and while this is all happening, remember, every battle is like a lot of moving parts. So it's not just isolated event and then another isolated event. So a lot of simultaneous things like that. One of the simultaneous things we left off with was McCausland's Confederate Cavalry looking for a way to get across and strike the Federals from a different perspective. So once this battle started this way, we have now shifted it to this sort of new orientation here where McCausland has come across at the Worthington McKinney Ford, which is where Matt's going to pick it up for a minute, and they're going to attempt to strike the Federal left flank. So Matt, bring us sort of to where we're standing here on the Worthington Farm on Monocacy National Battlefield. McCausland's trying to get across Monocacy River.
Correct. He is going to cross the Monocacy River down below us at the Worthington McKinney Ford. He is going to blow through a company of the 8th Illinois Cavalry.
So those are guys, by the way, we just covered at Rocky Springs. So same unit, different company, possibly some elements of a similar company where we were discussing maybe Company B is down here. We're not exactly sure, but we're definitely sure that it is elements of the 8th Illinois that are here fighting.
Right. And they're going to be driven back up over this plateau here past the Worthington House, which is just behind you. And John McCausland's Confederate Cavalry are going to come up here. Again, about 1,200 troopers. And this movement has not gone unnoticed by Lew Wallace and the Federal High Command off to the east of us. In fact, Wallace would write in his after-action report about seeing the contemptuous waving of guidons off to his left. He can see their flags. And so he is going to order James Ricketts and the 3rd Division, 6th Union Corps, his veteran troops, to turn and face this new threat. Now, Ricketts' veterans are going to advance onto the Thomas Farm property. He is going to throw a skirmish line out to the property line fence between Worthington and Thomas Farms. Where that fence was is approximately where modern 270 splits the battlefield today. Now, the Confederate Cavalry, when they get up here to the Worthington Farm, they're going to dismount. John McCausland is going to order all of his troopers to dismount and move forward. In fact, one of his troopers wrote after the battle that they didn't leave horse holders behind. They were ordered to tie up their horses or turn them loose. No man could be spared to hold them. So McCausland, who thinks he's tangoing with just militia, wants to put as much punch as possible into this attack.
That's a pretty risky move, though, to not hold the horses. Like, horses are in demand at all times of this war, whether it's desperate times or not. So you got to understand, like, sort of the urgency that is going on right now. It's like, we can't afford to lose these horses, but we also can't afford to hold on to them. We need to win this fight right here.
And right now.
Yeah.
They are going to advance eastward towards what they believe to be the flank of the Union line. And when they closed within about 100 yards of this property line fence, those Union skirmishers are going to rise up. And when they do, they are going to level a withering fire into this Confederate advance, throwing John McCausland's 1st Confederate Cavalry attack of the day back.
We've also shifted in tactics. Over on the earlier style of this battle, we had smaller, more independent fighting units, like Matt and I were describing conversationally. It's like the way that modern units sort of advance and cover each other. They operate in smaller numbers and things like that. Now over here, we have shifted back into the big open lines. That's what the Confederates are running into when they spring up, is a nice, fully formed battle line.
Right. Now, McCausland, his Cavaliers are going to fall back to this high ground where we're at, to the Worthington Farm. And John McCausland's going to take a little bit of time at this point, almost 2 hours, to really figure out what exactly is in front of him. And he's going to soon realize that this Federal line in front of him only stretches so far to the south. His next attack around 2 p.m. in the afternoon is actually going to swing around the flank of the Federal line to the south and would succeed in forcing it to fall back. Confederate cavalry would briefly capture the Thomas Farm buildings, before being thrown back themselves by, once again, James Ricketts veterans counterattacking right up the Thomas Farm lane, driving these Cavaliers back. By this point, it's near 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Jubal Early has had enough. Things have taken too long. He is going to order an entire division, 3,500 men, under the command of John Brown Gordon, to cross the Worthington-McKinney Ford, get up here onto the Worthington House Plateau, and drive those federal troops out of here and out of the way.
So before we get out of here and we move over to the 3 o'clock attack, a couple things to sort of just fill out the story in a fuller sense for you, because again, not everything is about the bullets flying through the air and things like that. I mentioned the Best family taking refuge in the basement dwellings of their home to take shelter away, from the violence and devastation of the battle. Same thing is going to occur here on the Worthington Farm. There's a very famous accounting from, at the time, 6-year-old Glenn Worthington. He's going to be literally viewing the battle and its aftermath through the slat boards of the ventilation, ports in the basement here. He is one of the, first historians of the battlefield here itself.
At least a chronicler.
At least a chronicler of it, so that's pretty cool. The other thing is, if you've been watching this video, you've probably been watching me wipe sweat off myself for the last 10 minutes, because I get really nasty sweaty as soon as the humidity and heat levels rise. But that's also very relevant to the story of the battle itself.
Right.
We are in today, we've had roughly high 80s, low 90s, sometimes it got into the mid 90s, but it's really humid in addition to the kind of scorching heat. And that is the real life weather conditions that these boys in blue and gray were fighting in on July 9th, 1864. So if you try to imagine, anytime you've ever talked to a reenactor or living historian or things like that, and you always ask that first question, are you hot? And we're always like, well, yeah, because we're wearing this stuff. Now imagine, we always tell you, now imagine getting shot at. That's what's happening here.
Right.
These men are in a bad physical situation just based on the dress and the campaigning and things, just because it's hot. And now there is a hot contest of violence happening around them. So I think that's important too to consider, is that just like in the American Revolution, where the Battle of Monmouth is famous for its heat, a lot hotter at Monmouth than it was here for sure. But heat, the weather, it does play a dramatic role in the battles. And these Union defenders, who are supposed to be inexperienced, and they've been putting up these hell of a fight, here and there across the chessboard of Monocacy Junction, they've been doing so in an incredibly hot and humid and nasty environment. And for guys who aren't used to fighting, period, they're doing so in one of the worst types of environments weather-wise to do so, and they're holding their own. I think that's pretty impressive. So I think it's also just worth pointing out that, yes, I am gross looking while I'm wiping all this sweat off of me, but this is literally the weather that we're standing in, is what the soldiers were experiencing on both sides of this line. So join us over in a few minutes over at the Thomas Farm for the 3 o'clock action, where the battle really starts to get into its heaviest phase of the day. Again, July 9th, 1864, Battle of Monocacy Junction.
Are you ready?